Hi, thank you for stopping by my channel. My name is Tiffany, and I'm currently a senior undergraduate student at the University of California at Davis. And I am an accepted medical student. Yay! So, more than a successful PreMed, I am a peer mentor who loves to share my tips and resources to others. Finding resources is technically my hobby, guys. And anyways, today I am sharing with you some of the common activity essays that I wrote for my medical school application, which got me accepted. So please note that my writing style is simple, straightforward, and reflective. These are just some of the examples to show how you can structure yours to best sell yourself. Everything you include in your application can be easily brought up again and asked to be elaborated during the interview if they're interested in your little story. So I highly suggest that you know your stuff very well. And lastly, please take my advice with a grain of salt. Just be yourself, be unique. So first, I want to remind you of the AAMC Core Competencies, just in case you forget about it. AAMC recommends to incorporate these 15 competencies into your application to make yourself stand out to the medical schools. This doesn't mean that you have to do 15 new things to get accepted. But these competencies provide a holistic framework to deliver how your work, activities, and life experiences can help you express your readiness for medical school. These 15 core competencies are divided into 4 big categories, which are interpersonal, intrapersonal, thinking and reasoning, and finally science competencies. I've only listed the competencies, but if you need more guidance, the detailed definitions and examples of these can be found in the AAMC website, which I have attached in the video's description. Again, I suggest you take a look at these carefully and think about all of your extracurriculars and trying to find a way to incorporate the relevant competencies in each of your activity. And another important factor is your theme. You should definitely find a general theme for your profile. This theme should run across your entire application and somewhat align with what you're trying to show in your personal statement as well. So for example, if you could consider integrating your trade backgrounds into describing the works that you did for an underserved community, or if your work was mostly community service, leadership, research, or clinical, if you want to take the opportunity to tell the admission committee about your life hardship or how being a minority influences you, you could also do that. But for the hardship, minority, or similar things, make sure to illustrate how you grew from the experiences rather than just purely telling them your struggles. And now I will go over a few examples of how I wrote my work and activity section with you. Here I included some of the most common types like hobby, clinical, shadow, research, etc. Please know that you do not have to follow how I wrote mine. These are just examples to give you some ideas how to write your own. I am just another pre-med student who has been successful in this past cycle, so I just want to share my tip with you. Besides, everybody did different activities and different things that they value. And if you like these examples in a document, please visit my blog where I posted all my content in a writing form. And if you find these helpful, please like and follow for more content to prep for your coming cycle. Just to get you familiar with the layout, for the hobby section, I indicated it as non-healthcare volunteer or community enrichment. There will also be healthcare experience, non-healthcare employment, or extracurricular activities, etc. You just have to categorize your experience based on the description they give. Here I said that my hobby was a volunteer type, title is powerlifting, and I am self-employed. I skipped the supervisor section. Well, note that you can actually skip the supervisor section if this is not relevant. But if you want to put down your supervisor's section, you could also. For example, you definitely need to put down the supervisor's name. If you're writing for a shadowing experience, that would just be the name of the doctor that you shadow. Next, you would list out your experience date, status, and hours. And please be careful here. If you recently started a position and you want to project the ending date, please also remember to project the hours accordingly. You don't want to say that you would be scribing at a hospital for the next 6 months, but only put down 50 hours because really, that was all you have at the point of applying, not the total hours. and 50 hours for 6 months means less than 10 hours a month, which sounds pretty not convincing, right? And the next one, you would have the space where you can copy and paste your experience to. Here I did a little comparison chart to show you the differences between AA and MCAS in their activity section. Generally speaking, although AA allows unlimited number of experiences, it is better to have some valuable experiences where you can elaborate on them rather than just bullet point them down just so you can get the experience. I recommend you not to try to oversell yourself with some 10 hours experiences, because there is a high chance that the community will ask you about the experience during the interview if they're interested in that specific one. Okay, here I have some format that I follow whenever possible. I try to include a short 1 to 2 sentences of the experience description, whether it's the responsibility or scenario set up for my story. Then I would include a lot of self-reflection, and I make sure to convey clearly what I did, how the experience impacted me, and how I grew from it. Remember, this should be about you, nobody else, just you. And also, it is a good idea to build the mini essay using the 15 core competencies as a guide to make sure you're demonstrating your skills appropriately. So let's first go over my hobby activity. Here it is. Powerlifting came to me as a healthy way to increase muscle mass to meet the minimum weight for blood donors. I believe it is my responsibility to contribute to alleviating the community's blood shortage. With a goal in mind, I consistently attended the gym 3 days a week for a year before gaining enough weight to donate blood. The importance of blood donation also motivated me to encourage my friends to participate in our school's blood drive. Not only was I able to achieve my personal goal of contributing to my community, I also found myself a lifelong hobby and a better lifestyle. You can see that I did not try to define powerlifting or describe what I did in the gym, because I think it's reasonable to assume that the community knows what powerlifting is. So instead, I described my motivation and what I hope to get from my hobby. I also slightly connected it to the medicine because my motivation was donating blood, and it was somewhat related to my ultimate goal. I want to point out some competencies that I use to guide my thought process when I jotted down this experience. So for example, I said, I believe it is my responsibility to contribute to alleviating the blood shortage. By saying this, I showed that I am aware of my accountability for a community and that I actually think of others. And this is an example of how I demonstrate my service orientation competency. Then I went and said that I consistently improve myself to achieve a goal. This can portray me as a reliable and dependable person. By going to the gym, trying to gain weight in order to donate blood, this is where I told them how the experience impacted me and what I did in response to the stressor, which is me being underweight. But I didn't stop there. I took a step further by telling my friends about donating blood, which I think of it as a way to demonstrate my oral communication skill. And so far in this fun hobby that I described to them, I have shown at least 3 competencies, which are service orientation, reliability, dependability, and oral communication. I also told them a little bit about myself, which is I am a power lifter who thinks of my community, and I can always relieve my stress by lifting some weights. But I have to say though, reflecting on a hobby is not easy because most of the time we play a hobby because we like it. We enjoy the hobby, the joy that it brings. So do take some time to think about it and try to think of what it teaches you and how you can apply those skills from your hobby in a professional setting. Alright, and for the second one, I'll talk about one of my clinical experiences. Okay. During an oxygen desaturation emergency of an unconscious patient, I volunteered to hold the suction mask while a nurse Al called the rapid response team. Despite the given medications, his oxygen level was still 85. Recalling my asthma condition, I suggested repositioning him by lifting up his jaws to improve his breathing pattern. Although he still experienced hypoxia, his oxygen saturation went up to 90 and his agonal breathing has stopped. This instance has taught me to integrate and utilize the knowledge of my personal condition in such critical scenarios to help improve patient status. To be honest with you, I feel like this experience is a bit dramatic, or it's one of those that I try to sell myself. But I do want to show you different styles of how I put my experience section together so that it doesn't look like I only follow one format strictly. Because depending on your experience, one format could do a better job than another. So let me just go over it with you. So I first emphasize that I took initiative and volunteered to lend a hand during a stressful situation. That means that instead of freaking out, I can adapt and keep calm under pressure. Then I said I recall my own experience and suggested something. Here I am using the logic and reasoning from my own asthma condition to help solve the patient's breathing difficulty, which, as a person with asthma, I know this quite well. And me applying the knowledge about myself to solve others' problem can be thought as a human behavior competency. And I'm not trying to show off or anything. It's more like I instantly suggested something purely out of my thought. I'm pretty sure the nurses know all these, but it was super hectic at the moment. I was just there holding the mask for the patient, so I just kind of spoke out what was in my mind. And lastly, I reflected on this incident by literally stating what this experience has taught me. This is the impact the experience had on me. I showed that I learned from this encounter, that I actually reflected from this for future improvement, which is the last new competency that I display in this clinical experience, the capacity for improvement, besides resilience and adaptability, critical thinking, and human behavior. And on to the next one, I am writing about my shadowing experience. Yay! So, while shadowing many general procedures such as cholecystectomy, mass removal, or hernia repair, I had the opportunity to speculate the patient's statistics in response to the medications, including blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen, and carbon dioxide levels. With the information that I learned in class, I practiced critical thinking by using logic and reasoning to predict the patient's status during and after surgery. By indirectly anticipating the patient's potential outcome, I was able to integrate my knowledge into real-life scenarios. So here, there wasn't much that I can show because the experience itself was pretty passive. I said that I used the knowledge I learned in my physio class to speculate the patient's stat in a real-life situation. And yeah, of course, I only predicted the stat and just kind of used that as a topic to talk to the docs in there, making good impressions, And I tried to squeeze in two competencies, which are critical thinking and living system. And shadowing experiences where many of us struggle with because a lot of time we don't really engage in anything other than standing there and observing. But if you're writing about it, try to think of a moment where you came up with a question which showed your thought process, curiosity, or something like that. I personally think that this is better to talk about yourself than other doctors who influence you, because you will start to describe that doc instead of you. And this paragraph should be about you, who you are, what you think, what you did, and not about the other doc because they're already a doctor. And next is my community service activity. In the assembly station, along with other local volunteers, I helped to assemble food carts where I ensure each cart included all the necessary items such as vegetables, meat, fruit, bread, and dairy products. After each cart was ready, I transported it to the next station to load it up to visitors' trunks. As a person who received help from the church when my family first moved to the U.S., I enjoy giving back to the community, especially during this COVID pandemic, where food was a concern as finances became a more significant burden. For this type of experience, I can show some of my interpersonal skills. I volunteer along with other people, which is a perfect example for teamwork. I also demonstrated my service orientation mindset once again when I literally said that I enjoy giving back to the community. And if you notice, I did emphasize mostly on providing my own background in this essay. For example, my family moved to the US, meaning I wasn't born in America. In my last sentence, I tried to let the community know how I appreciate my community, how I think of food insecurity during the pandemic since I'm applying in the COVID-19 cycle. And in the 2021-22 cycle, you could probably integrate some COVID thoughts in your essays as well, if your activity involves anything with COVID-19 anyways. And by tying my community service volunteer, my background, and my thought process together, I think this is a good paragraph that shows my effective written communication skill. And next, let's head to the research extracurricular. After taking my classes, I was fascinated by the applications of science in real life. As I interned at an organometallic lab, I learned to utilize the biological model to synthesize an industrial polymer that had the enzymatic activity to convert methane gas into methanol. While I was there, I became more proficient in delivering presentations of our subgroup weekly progress. I also found that comprehending scientific articles effectively helped me to understand more about other possible applications in finding new directions for our experiments. I started off by stating my motivation for joining my lab because I thought it would be helpful to let them know that I did not join the lab just to check the list for medical school. I did it because I sincerely wanted to learn about the practical aspect of the theories and the concepts that I got in class. Then I explained how I used the biology information I learned in class to apply in a practical aspect in the industrial chemistry field, which could be considered as scientific inquiry competency. Then I talked briefly about how I improved my communication skill and teamwork with my subgroup. And finally, I reflected on one of the important skills I learned in the research lab, which is comprehending scientific articles. I wanted to let the community know how important I think it was and how I could potentially use it in the future. Maybe in medical school, who knows? And this reflection step also brought out my belief in some room for my self-improvement. You see, not only I was able to demonstrate to them my motivation, what I did in the lab as a lab assistant, I also let them know my thought process and how I can use this experience as a foundation for future activities. Do I think this is a great example of writing a research activity? No. I always think that this could be done better. But is this sufficient to convey my message to the community? I think so. I was able to sell myself without using too many fancy or technical terms, which is a difficult thing to achieve. When you write a mini essay about research experience, I tried really hard to refrain myself from going into very in-depth about my research because, of course, I want to let them know all about these amazing projects that I did in the lab, but I have to stop myself from doing that. My writing style is that I like my content to be very straightforward and easy to read, so I'm very happy with this paragraph. And as for you, please consider carefully what you are going to include. Yours does not have to look like mine, but consider having somebody who does not have a heavy background in the science to read your research essay or research activity essay and see if they understand what you're trying to say. The last one I'm going to go over today is my medical mission. Some of us have the opportunity to do a medical mission prior to the pandemic, and hopefully it will resume after this COVID once we have all the vaccines and everything works out. But if you have the opportunity to go on one, I highly recommend it. Anyways, let's go over what I wrote for my medical mission. On the first day of the optometry station, Dr. Moncada and I meticulously measured the prescription for each patient. Through many trials, we selected the best fitted pairs of glasses that would give them the clearest vision. The next day at the triage station, with the help of the translator, I facilitated the process and earned the trust of many patients by collecting the history using some Spanish medical terms and nonverbal cues. On the last day, I assisted my instructor to perform fluoride treatments on infants and show the children and parents the proper dental hygiene practice. So for this experience, I showed how I worked well with Dr. Moncada and the translator to achieve the best results. And I went on and demonstrated that I could be a reliable and dependable person by trying to work around the cultural barriers between the patients and myself. And because my mission took place in Honduras, where Spanish was the primary culture language, and almost nobody spoke English in the community, I portrayed my cultural competencies by trying to use the Spanish medical terms and body language to communicate. This could also present my social skills in different circumstances. And finally, I concluded my paragraph with a little touch on educating the patients. And overall, this experience allowed me to display many of the traits that really aligns with my theme and kind of remind the readers of what I value, which is service orientation, communication, and cultural competency. With that last example, I want to tie everything together and remind you of my overall theme, which is what I really want you to imagine me as a person other than my stats. So with these essays, along with the competencies that I demonstrated all along, I hope you could see that I strive for community service, mainly about food insecurity and underserved populations. I myself am bilingual and bicultural, which I describe in my personal statement also. And by that, I also embrace cultural diversity, not only within myself, but I try to show the community by interacting with different populations. And lastly, I like to expand the research that fits my interest and curiosity that I get from my classes. After I got my secondary, depending on the mission statement of each school, if any of their values match with mine, I would totally expand even more on my theme and paint them a more detailed picture of me. I personally think that having a theme is extremely important because it could help to connect all of your experiences you have and speak out your values and personality. Without a theme, you can get very lost and your application will seem kind of disconnected. So this is the end of my video for today. I hope my examples and tips can help you get into your dream school like how I got into mine. And if you like the videos, please like and subscribe for future content. I strive to provide you with all the examples of what I did to successfully apply for medical schools. And if you have any questions or any content suggestions, please comment down below and I will try my best to answer you. And again, thank you very much for stopping by my channel. I believe we all will make it into medical school. Until next time, good luck and take care.